Well, Gideon, thank you so much for being on my podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. I noticed that you have experienced what a lot of us have already experienced before, which is heartbreak. But instead of changing your
Mhm.
hairdo or doing this hookup thing that a lot of people do, you walked for 7,000 kilometers from the north of Denmark to Santiago in Spain. What led you to actually follow through on that decision? Because I'm sure people have thought that they just wanted to walk far away from wherever they were experiencing, but you did it. So can you tell us about it?
Sure. Yeah, I mean 7,000 kilometers, that's what I've walked in total in my life with a backpack. And then half that distance was between the north of Denmark and Santiago de Compostela. The way that started was I was in a breakup scenario, and when I look back, it was sort of an innocent, short-lived relationship, but one that I guess I had hoped for would bring more. And I was really sad about it because I went back to a cycle I thought I had left. So that was sort of the dark part of it, that it just made me feel stuck. So I moved out of her place and I went into this other red farmhouse in the middle of nowhere. And I didn't have any transportation options really, other than my legs. So because of how my situation was, I started walking 3 times a day. And then on the 30th morning, I woke up really frustrated because I just felt stuck. I didn't feel like my life was moving anywhere, and I was just in this rut. And I woke up the 30th morning really being frustrated. So something has to frickin' change now, like really decisively. So for whatever reason, I just sat down and meditated for what became 3 hours. And I don't know if you've meditated for a long period of time, but after that, you need to move a bit and sort of shake your body up a bit. And I was in the rhythm of walking, so I thought, okay, I'm gonna walk to the ocean. And 2 hours later, I was at the ocean. That was June 7th, by the way, and summer has sort of started. It was, nice, warmer kind of weather, and but just as I stood there, a very vivid voice just asked me, "Why don't you walk from Denmark to Santiago, Gideon?" And I was really looking around like, where did that come from? Of course, I'm humble enough to know that it was probably something inside of my head or whatever it may be. But it was very vivid. It was really like somebody was talking to me.
Yeah.
And it made me smile and inspired and really made me feel like there was something here. I was curious. And then on the way out there, I texted my parents to see if they were up for lunch. So I kept walking and went to the harbor and I met my parents, and I just started sharing what had just happened. And they could very quickly see that something had changed. All of a sudden, I was really radiant, smiling, and sort of excited about what I just shared. And that was the emotional answer to the question. And 2 weeks later, I started walking, having no idea why, just completely trusted this energy that for some reason wanted to pull me toward Santiago and what is called the end of the earth. And yeah, that was how it started.
That's crazy. Did you have any connection to Santiago at all? Had you like seen a movie or seen a show or any aspirations that might suggest why you were inclined to go there?
Yeah, so if you're familiar with the Camino de Santiago, it's a long pilgrimage across Spain,
Mhm.
and there's many different paths toward Santiago de Compostela, but the main one is called the French way of the Camino, the French way, because it starts in France, even though that most of the walk is walked in Spain. I saw a movie in 2011 called The Way. I would recommend anybody listening to this, if you're interested in the Camino, don't know what it is, watch the movie The Way. It's with Martin Sheen and Emilio Estevez, a very nice father and son movie that inspired a lot of people to walk, including me, I guess. And a couple of other hints sort of happened after that walk. Somebody was talking about it, about the Camino, and I picked up a book from my old basketball coach that I wanted to read called The Pilgrimage, having no idea that was about the Camino. And when I started reading that, I was like, okay, here we go. I need to probably do this then. So that was my first walk across Spain in April of 2014. And then the year after, I felt like doing it again, but walking from Lisbon up north towards Santiago in Portugal. So
Mm.
walking through Portugal. And so that was my first two real walking experiences. I guess the first short one was I walked down to the bottom of the Grand Canyon and back up again in 2011, 12, I had New Year's down there with a few friends at the time. So that was my first kind of walking adventure little experience. And then I did those longer ones. So when this happened in 2020, I had the experience and knew what it would require, at least in the sense of day by day walking. But the difference was that when you walk from Denmark or walk through Europe, there's not as many places to sleep like there is on the Camino. There's many pilgrim hostels, and it's very touristy now. There's so many people walking that it's almost impossible not to find a place to stay. unless it's really peak season. So the difference was that, first of all, it was 2020. So if you remember, the world was in lockdowns and restrictions and all this stuff. And I started walking on the 22nd of June, which is actually also the same day as my book, The Pilgrim Spirit, which is about this long walk, is coming out here next week on June 22nd. So there's a bit of synchronicity there. But yes, I had a tent with me during the long walk. I knew what it would require, at least walking wise. But obviously, it was a much longer distance. I had no idea what was going to happen. And even though there was all these restrictions and lockdowns, potential things happening or already had happened before the summer, I actually had no focus on that. I completely trusted this energy that I was following in a way that, yeah, there was nothing else going on really. I just had complete trust and faith in this energy that was pulling me in that direction. So I had traveling experience. Just to finish that, I started traveling in 2010.
Yeah.
So I had the walks in between all the traveling. So I had both traveling experience, being in the unknown many times, backpacking in different places in the world and so on. So I had some experience in the sense of embarking on something new. But
Right.
obviously, this was the biggest adventure of my life, and on very unknown terms, because I didn't really plan anything. Like 2 weeks before, I had no idea that this was going to happen, right? So,
Right.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's how it began.
That's so incredible. There's so much to touch on here. And of course, I want to dive deeper into your book. I think that's going to be really interesting. I think
Mhm.
that where my curiosity draws me when I'm listening to what you're sharing is that personally, when I've been experiencing, I think that the greatest thing that I accomplished is the perspective that it gave me, because I think, especially coming from a Scandinavian country, you kind of forget to acknowledge, or you lose track of how lucky you are and how privileged you are.
Mhm.
And I recognized the more I travel, the more perspective life gave me. And it was crucial to how I showed up when I returned home. Did
Mhm.
you have a similar experience at all? What did that look like for you?
In terms of how you saw yourself differently when you returned back home?
I mean, it could be personally, it could be how I
Yeah,
see the world, how I see poverty,
yeah,
how
yeah,
I see money, my relationship with all
right.
of these.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
all of
No,
those.
it's a really good question. It's a really good question. It was something I paid to attention to a lot, actually.
Mm,
Every time I arrived in an airport in Denmark, I was wondering, who am I now, or what's new now, or what's different now. And I think I always sort of felt a little bit of an upgrade every time I came back home.
mm,
But I also know I came back home with a lot of interest in sharing that with my parents, especially because I wanted to. My wound as a sort of human being, or whatever you want to call that, is to be. I wanted to be good enough.
yeah, yeah.
My parents come, or especially my dad's parents, comes from very religious and very rigid religious background where everything was right and wrong, black and white, and so on. I was the oldest child, so I probably got a lot of that energy, inserted in me from an
Yeah,
early
that makes
age.
sense.
So every time I came back home, I wanted to prove that I was good enough, and I came back improved and so on, because I lived a very different life. I don't have any formal education, and I just wanted to live differently. And that was both probably hard for myself in the sense that I was really pursuing a path of complete unknowns, just wanting to find my path, whatever that was, which definitely wasn't, regular school and maybe regular work and jobs and stuff, even though I've had many odd jobs. I just wanted to live differently and travel and find my way. It's interesting to look back on and see how, yeah, when you come back to where you grew up and everything is familiar, what do you bring back home? Because when you travel, and you've experienced that, I'm sure as well, traveling is not just seeing something new or being somewhere else. It's also putting yourself in a new place and seeing who am I there?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
how am I responding to new situations and new people and challenges or whatever it may be. And I think that's why you travel. It's not just to skip around places, it's to kind of experience and explore and sort of connect with yourself and where you are. For at least for me, that's been a pursuit, to be in places for longer periods of time. I don't like to just skip around and do something for a few days or a week. I like to kind of stay and connect.
You're
So.
grounded. Yeah, no, I fully relate to that. I've only ever kind of started over in two places, which was first in the US, and then I moved to Greece. And I
Mm,
moved to the island of Crete and just started working there for like five
nice.
months. And there is something completely different about these places, but it all appealed to me in so many ways. And it is that beauty of just immersing yourself into the culture, and you'll learn to enjoy the beauty of what that culture offers.
Yes.
And there was a very long time where I was traveling where I almost had this neglect or this like anger towards Norway. But
Mm,
when I came home and I was like, okay, what if I used same lens here and don't think too much about like everything that I thought I knew about Norway, because that's also like old wiring.
Yeah.
And to recognize that I can also look for the absolute beauty here and see if that will do something about the way I connect with my country. And
Yeah.
it was tremendous. And I could only accomplish that with the perspective, which is
Mhm.
why I always encourage people to travel and to immerse themselves into something new, just because of how much richer you'll feel as a result of it.
Yeah. I think it's a common thing when you're young traveling. You are sort of both running away and running towards something, maybe. Your ego is more involved when you're young, I think,
Yeah.
or it can be. Not in a negative way necessarily, but sort of being a little ignorant with yourself and the world and what's going on, but you just need to do something. At least that some of us feel that way, maybe. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I get it.
Something that I also wanted to ask you a little bit further about, I wondered to what extent you're comfortable talking about it. It's the faith part of it all,
Mm,
because what I experienced myself growing up in Norway was that my parents were also Christian, they were religious, and
mhm,
it wasn't so strict and so rigid, but it was definitely a part of the culture and a part of our thought processes. So Bible verses were common to me, lullabies and praying was really common to me. And then I just kind of lost interest because I thought Bible and Sunday, no, not the Bible per se, but like Sunday school and going to
mm,
church was just ultra boring, and it just did
mm.
not feel like home in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And but then I grew up, and once I hit 2016, it must have been 10 years ago, when I had my first heartbreak that just led me into
Mm,
despair, thinking I could not survive this possibly. That's when I realized I had to just call out to God and just be like, I don't know how to do this. So you're gonna have to carry me through this
mm,
kind of. And ever since then, my life has just been increasingly about God and how He shows up in my life. And I
mm.
wonder if you carried it with you too, or if there was resentment there. How did you navigate that?
I think the resentment part was mostly directed towards my grandparents.
Okay.
My grandparents were, it's hard to say how that really developed, but I'm assuming that was because the first 5 6 years 5 years of my life we lived right next to them and were closer to them. So I think that the energy literally, yeah, got into me from them in some aspects. And I think the resentment I've had is just not being seen for who I am. They have never really been interested in me in the sense of who I am as a human being and what I like. It's always been about them converting me into their belief system and what's right and wrong in
Mm,
their mind. And so the resentment for me has always been about that not being seen and not, yeah, being not feeling good enough for them or yeah, in that way. So it took me many years and up until this long walk that I finally forgave and got perspective and so on. But the faith part of it, I think there's to me there's a universal energy that we all are part of, and no one can really run away from. So no matter what you call it, I think it operates in exactly the same way.
mhm.
And faith is a beautiful word. My writing mentor says faith is freedom from fear. If you have tremendous amount of faith, there is literally no fear in you if
Yeah.
you feel faith. And having faith was what started me on my walk. I trusted the unknown, but I had a tremendous amount of faith in this guided energy, whatever it was that was guiding me. And I leaned on that. That's all I could lean on was that. So faith is amazing. Faith is beautiful. And I often explain it as if you are in a challenging situation or you can see through whatever the challenge may be for you, faith is practicing being able to look through it or beyond it in some aspect. You know, it's there's a dark cloud, there's a challenge before you, whatever it may be. But with faith, you will be able somehow, if you connect with it strongly enough, to look beyond it, I think.
Yeah.
And doing that, I think, just makes it easier to take the steps that needs to be taken to move forward. Yeah.
I really like this image. It's stuck in my mind now. I completely imagined this space of the unknown as this big
Mm,
black cloud. And your entire nervous system, the way you know it today, is screaming at you, don't you dare walk in there. It makes no sense. But
yeah.
it's just the unknown. It seems scary. It seems dark. It seems unbearable. But all you do is walk in faith. It is actually beautiful. I really like that image that you just created in my mind, and also the way that you're framing it as faith, this absence of fear. And
Mhm,
something that I've talked about a lot lately is how women in particular crave safety in the same way that men say freedom,
mhm,
crave freedom. And for women to feel safe, I was almost wondering if my draw to God, and maybe a lot of people's draw to God, is that element of, well, if I can just place my faith in you, then I am safe. And
Mm.
then it is okay to take the first step because you're already there in the tomorrow. You've already
Yeah.
figured it out. And it is a way in which I'm trying to think about more today to let go of control, especially in
Mm.
following my passion and my dreams, and daring to put myself out there, although I think it's really scary to be seen, although I
Mm.
want to talk.
Yeah.
I have to trust that God is already in tomorrow and that there's something purposeful about what I'm creating. And that's clearly what happened to you too when you got that voice in your head. And I wonder, did you ever have an aha moment or many where you understood exactly why you had to do that walk?
Yeah, so the ongoing question I had for myself, but also maybe many would have for me, was why did you walk? Why are you walking? And I don't think I will ever get a defining answer to that question. I know the outcomes of it. I know the outcomes that was provided for me or helped supported me in my journey since then. And that could be that could be an answer. But why I necessarily had to walk, of course, it was definitely about finding my path still. I was in a big transition. I think the world was in a big transition, and I think many people were in a big transition. I was not the only one. First of all, I was not the only one walking from my home country. There was many people I met at the very end that had walked from their home country. It was not a unique thing, although it was unique to each one of us, obviously. I think that's how I would answer that.
I guess another way of looking at it too could be that the whole purpose wasn't for you to arrive at some sort of destination either. If the journey itself was actually, I guess that is a cliche in itself, in enjoying everything, and the whole trip was the purpose. It was all the purpose. It's who you met,
Mm.
what you ate, what you saw, what you learned. It's
Good.
just all of the above. It was
Yeah.
everything that happened along the way that was the purpose of it all. And the bottom line was just start walking and trust that you're okay tomorrow.
Yes. Now, when you would talk about this, the journey and destination and all that, it's always a funny conversation because it is very cliche, and obviously there's some truth in it.
Yeah.
But in the book, I'm talking about walking in the sense of where did walking start, and walking is human. If we can't walk, I mean, I think that the most profound start in our life is when we start walking, because I think it's a biological thing that if we see a baby walk, we know that it will eventually be able to survive, right? Because usually back in the day, we walked to hunt, to gather, to survive, and that was how we survived. And I think that's why everybody's so excited when a baby can walk, because it's biologically driven, that we know that means that there is potential for survival here.
Right.
Uh,
That's funny. I never thought of it like that, but I
yeah.
guess it's true.
But in terms of the journey and destination part, I have a question in the book, which is, what is the value of a journey that doesn't end? Because so many people talk about, well, the journey is the destination, but if the journey never ends, I mean, if a bus ride never ends, if a train journey through Europe never ends, and you are in a train for 30 years, I mean, I think most people would call that a nightmare. So I think it's important to realize that, yes, we definitely need to enjoy the journey and be present and become what we as much as we can along the way. But there is a significant satisfaction in when things end too. It's very important that things end. Not necessarily if we love somebody, we don't want that to end. We don't want our parents or our friends or our relationship, we don't want that to end if we love those people. But it's also a reality of life. And I think a long walk is a beautiful metaphor to teach you that. And to skip a little bit to the end here, when you finish in Santiago, some people, they continue toward the coast. You finish in what is called Finisterre, in a little town fishing village called Finisterre. It means, like in old Latin, it's Finistade, it means the end of earth. And when you walk into town, it's a common fishing village in Spain. If you continue through the village and out to the lighthouse, which is 2.5 kilometers further out, there's a lighthouse, there's a 0.0 kilometer marker, meaning that's the end. I mean, you cannot walk any further than that. And when you have walked for weeks and months and you arrive out there, you realize, you get this very interesting sort of experience that this is actually the end now. It's finished. I can't walk any further. And then you walk back to town. And in my estimation and my experience, you bring back what you learned back into town and to the life that you're then continuing on after that.
Right.
And I think that's part of what we learn or should learn on a long journey, is that things end and it's good. We learn something, a pilgrimage of weeks and months, it's not real life. It's a metaphor for life, and we can bring a lot with us on our real journey in life. And I think that's why we walk. Yeah.
And you just took it quite literally and ran with it or walked with it, I suppose. And I think that's really admirable. I think we all have our own version of how we arrived to that conclusion, but I think it's
Yeah.
really cool that you decided to walk. And what a Scandinavian thing to do too. I kind of love that as well.
Yeah.
But so when it comes to your book in particular, is it about your entire journey as a whole, or is it the specific walk? I mean, the title of the book is The Pilgrim Spirit. Do you want to talk
Yes.
about
We'll
that?
show it here.
Let's see it. There it is. The longer you walk, the deeper you go.
Yeah. Yeah. So the Pilgrim Spirit, so the Pilgrim Spirit it's sort of an idea that people talk about when they walk on the Camino. The Pilgrim Spirit is this connection you have with each other and yourself and the walk itself. The French way of the Camino is very special. Millions of people have walked on that path throughout, the last 1,000 years, and there's definitely an energy there. When I walked in 2014 and walked in 2015 in Portugal, there was a huge difference in energy, completely different. It was almost empty in Portugal in comparison to the one in France, the French way of the Camino. That was very special. And so the Pilgrim Spirit is sort of this idea that people just talk about, this Pilgrim Spirit, and it could be anything really. It could be connection or inspiration or whatever. But the Pilgrim Spirit is why I called it that, because that's what I've experienced when I've walked. And then the longer you walk, the deeper you go, is this idea that any walk is valuable. Even a 30-minute walk around your house or whatever to take a break, or a walk to the store, or a longer walk or a hike, or any walk is valuable to take a break or to take time out of your life. And of course, many people on the Camino, they walk. There's 500,000 people walking in Santiago every year now.
Okay.
And most of those people, or at least a big percentage of those people, walk only 100 kilometers or 200 kilometers. And I say only because that's a long way as well.
Right. Yeah.
But there is a big difference between walking for a week and walking for a month or 2 months or 3 months or more. And it's not because it's right or wrong. It's just because it takes time for you to get into a deeper level of yourself. And one of the main concepts or ideas that I've elaborated on in the book is called the 3 phases of the Camino, which is an idea that I received from another pilgrim on my first walk. And so it's not an original idea, but to just give you a brief summary of that, the 3 phases of the Camino is about the physical phase, the mental phase, and the spiritual phase. And fits quite well with the French way of the Camino in terms of how the route is, interestingly enough. If you walk the Camino for the first time, you're very excited, most likely. You have looked forward to this for a long time, especially if you're looking to walk from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. It's exciting. There's a lot of history and legendary, history around the Camino, and many people come having studied the Camino or watched the movie or read something about it. But it's also a superficial phase, this physical phase. You don't have the experience. You don't know what it's like to walk 10, 15, 20, 30 kilometers a day. And that takes time. It can take 10 days or 2 weeks or more to really get used to the physical aspect of walking every single day, right? And but that's a phase you have to go through before you can go into a deeper phase, which is the mental phase. And on the Camino, the French way of the Camino, there's a path called the Meseta, which is between the 2 big cities called Burgos and Lyon. And the Meseta is a very urban plateau in the north of Spain, where there's about no trees, there's no big cities, there's very small villages, there's just big fields, there's no mountains. There's nothing to really distract you as much as in the beginning with the mountains and so on. That means that you are challenged now, just like in meditation. If you sit and meditate for a long time, your mind will begin to chatter away, and you will sit there and try to calm it down. And when you walk, that's a similar experience where you are going deeper into yourself. And that's where a lot of the darkness or heaviness is coming through.
Right.
In the mental phase, where you are experiencing releasing a lot of, in our society, we have not really been taught how to deal with our emotions. And if we have had traumatic experiences or whatever it may be, it's also a defense mechanism and based on fear, right? So we contract our emotions and fear-based emotions into our body, literally, and suppress them.
Yeah.
And that probably is attached to our bones, our tissues, our muscles in a way, so that when we walk far enough, we will begin to release a lot of that.
Yeah.
And that means that a lot of the trauma and darkness and heaviness and burdens and, and that could be conscious and unconscious things begins to be released. So then we begin to feel all these things, and that can very challenging, right? Because you begin to feel all the things you have suppressed for so long.
Right.
But the beauty about that is that because you are moving so much, you're kinetic, right? You're taking steps, you're walking, you're moving almost every day, if not every day, walking 10, 20, 30 kilometers every day, which helps you release all the time. It helps you release, and you're literally walking through what you need to walk through,
Right.
like in a very literal sense.
You're quite
And
literally walking it through. Yeah.
yes, and that's the key. The beauty about walking far is that all you need to focus on is taking the steps. That's all you need to focus on.
That's
And the
literally.
longer you walk, the more you release, and then you'll begin to realize that you begin to receive things from the universe or God or whatever you want to call that, things you didn't even know you needed.
Right.
You know, a lot of people they have a motivation for walking, but they probably don't know why until later on in the walk, perhaps, or maybe
Right.
after it's finished.
Yeah.
And so when we are in this mental phase, we release and we release and we release, and we can cry and be frustrated and angry. And it's good. Maybe it's good that many people find themselves on this very empty area in Spain, because then they can really show their emotions to themselves and let it
Yeah.
go, right? But that's a really beautiful phase, because that's where the work really takes place, the spiritual work, the personal work. And that then leads you to the spiritual phase, getting an experience of this pilgrim spirit, or this connection to yourself, to other pilgrims, to nature, and so on. And that's when you walk into the beautiful region of Galicia in the northwest of Spain,
Mm.
which is my favorite region in Spain. I love it. In the book, I reference it a lot to the Shire in the Lord of the Rings.
Okay,
Because
that's
if I
funny.
was a hobbit, I wanted to live in a place in Europe, I would probably choose Galicia. It's a very beautiful place where it rains a bit more than other places in Spain, which means everything is very green. It really feels like the Galician people are moving in a much slower pace. You know, they're still herding, animals up and down the roads, and it's just a very beautiful place with mountains again and more rivers and creeks and so on. That's when you really begin to connect also with yourself, the experience, being a pilgrim, and all this stuff. And that's when the three phases begin to connect a bit more. You've been used to the physical phase, you're used to walking, you're okay with releasing some of the stuff
Right.
that's coming through, and now you can really begin to reconnect with yourself. And as all these layers of the mental emotional onion has been coming off for a period of time. So yeah, that's a way to look at the Camino or a walk, but also life,
Yeah.
and so if you embark on new adventures or whatever it may be.
I
Yeah.
mean, absolutely. And what I think is so cool about this too is that like this is exactly where Walk It Off came from.
Mm.
It's so much deeper than that. It's
Yeah.
literally the healing itself is walking. It's like whatever is stuck in your body, release it, walk it off, but
Yeah.
of course it depends on how heavy it has been and how much you've been neglecting or carrying without releasing, and
Yeah.
and I think that's so cool. I love that the metaphors just keep ringing true. I'm like, maybe I should go for a new walk somewhere. Maybe I should go somewhere
I would
far.
I would
What's
recommend it.
stopping me at this point? I mean, it sounds cool. I mean, I'm also from Scandinavia, so for me, it's also quite natural to be walking. But so I guess the kicker at the all, like what I want to know about all of this, putting it all together, is that there's always going to be this idea that, okay, when someone is kind of traveling for a long time and they're aspired to travel, did you ever find home again? Did you ever
Mm.
return and got that stability or that partner, for instance? Because it all started with a heartbreak. Like, are you now happy in love? What does your life look like today?
Yes, good question. Yeah, I think I began slowly to find home in myself after the long walk. It has taken a long time to connect with my path, I guess, and what I'm supposed to do here. I just think that this book and everything I put into this is basically the inspiration I've experienced myself when it comes to long walks and adventure. And now I can begin to share and just hope that can provide value, because I feel I'm ready to share that value. And that could be another way of saying that's home now, in some sense, that there is a place where I can go to both and literally experience again, but also a place where I can share value from. So, but I think, yeah, it took a long time. It took a long time to find out what it was that connected with home. And of course, sometimes I could come home for a period of time and sort of wonder, what the heck am I doing with my life? And skipping around to place and wondering, and it could look like you were a bit restless, and I'm sure that some people would have seen me as restless, but regular life, being in the comfort zone of staying somewhere for too long was just not me. So I had to keep moving. I have to keep travel to find that path. And another place of home is obviously I have a partner now, and that's the love of my life. And a funny story about that is that I went back to Finisterre, the end of the earth, in the end of 2023. And I, halfway into the month, decided that I wanted to go out to the zero point 0.0 marker every morning towards until the end of the year. So 2.5 months or something, I would go out there and touch the 0 0.0 kilometer rock because it meant a lot to me. And I just loved that place out there. But after 5 days, I didn't get up in time, and I was a little delayed based on my own expectations, at least. And so I decided later that morning or mid-morning, I decided, okay, I'm going to go out there anyway. I'm going to bring my book and so on. And when there was 300-400 meters left, I saw these two pairs of people walking ahead of me that had come down from a side road. I quickly passed the first pair of people, a woman and a man there, and then the next pair. And I was about to just walk past the guy there on the left, and all of a sudden there was these two beautiful eyes and a natural smile smiling at me, and smiled at her, and instant chemistry, and wondering what the heck was going on there. And they came down to the 0 0.0 marker rock where a lot of people get their pictures taken. So I helped with pictures, but I already had slowed down and sort of wondering what was going on there, because it was instant chemistry. Something was just happening there. And the woman, I borrowed her camera to take pictures, and the other guys sort of continued walking because they wanted to see the lighthouse. And then I just told her, I'm going to be in this bar here and just read. And if you're interested, I'm in there and we can have a talk or whatever. And so I sat in there for an hour, which was a bit strange because I felt like she was with me in my heart, or in my sort of sphere of energy. I was like, she's right here, but I can't see her. So I sat in there for about an hour, I think, and I'm sort of wondering, where is she? I was like, okay, I shook it off, and I started walking out of the bar down the path toward the souvenir shop. And all of a sudden I saw this. I looked back a couple of times, and all of a sudden I saw this very bright red jacket doing jumping jacks and trying to get my attention. And I didn't know that in that moment I left the bar. She had told her friends, I'm going to go and find my future husband, she said. So, we started talking. A beautiful rainbow was there, beautiful day. And we went into the bar and started to talk, or I talked mostly. She's from Eastern Europe, so I didn't realize that she didn't understand half of what I was saying, but she was playing her face really well. Like, she really understood everything that was going on. So, but yeah, from that day, we have been together, and just a beautiful human being, and teaching me to calm down and be a better better person and a better man. So yeah, that was sort of one of the beautiful outcomes of my walk, or my connection to the Camino. She had finished the walk, obviously. She had walked from Porto in Portugal, so she had also finished her walk. So yeah, we had that in common. And yeah.
I'm shook. I'm like, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. I love a good love story. And I mean, the fact that this trip that you walked on because you were on this escape of your own heartbreak led you to the same.
So this was actually 3 years later, right?
I understand, but you wouldn't have gone back there if it hadn't been for that initial walk. I mean, maybe you would have, of course, who knows? But I mean, at least at that point, it had become a habit. Like, I love how you corrected yourself in saying that you were late that day, at least according to your own standards. My mind is always just going to be screaming that God makes no mistakes.
Yeah, so that's also how I see it.
That's so cool. That's so cool. That's awesome. I love that she just went full speed ahead and said she was going to meet her husband too. That's brave. That's cool. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if I may add another interesting thing that happened, which was also one of the outcomes. There's a guy who endorsed this book, a very famous author. And in 2018, I was sort of in a dumpster again, sort of wondering what the heck am I going to do with my life? And I tried to pick myself out of that dumpster by writing out a list of many things I wanted to experience and learn and see, and people I wanted to meet especially. And there was this guy that I read a couple of books about, and his books just spoke to me, and found everything I could about him online. And he just connected with me, and I said, I wanted to meet him. I want to have dinner with him. That was my goal. The problem was he was no longer in public life. So in some sense, that was impossible. But I started my long walk there in 2020, and once in a while I kept looking for him online to just see if he would get back online, or if I could find a connection to him. And I then found out that he began to upload music to one of the social channels, and I subscribed right away. And it took about a month or something. And then I found out that his assistant wrote me on LinkedIn to say thank you for doing that I started following him. And of course, that made me happy because I was just a big step closer. I kept in touch with her. I documented my entire trip on YouTube. So if anybody listening to this want to get a sense or an idea of what it's like to walk for 5 months, you can find my YouTube channel. It's at The Pilgrim Spirit in name as well. She must have shared that with him, because at the end of the walk, I talked to her a couple of times, and she said to me that he wanted to talk to me, which was a bit surprising, because I thought I was the one wanting to talk to him. Um,
That's
if many people have read the book Shantaram,
yeah.
and that's a very famous book about a guy who escaped prison in Australia and became part of the slum and mafia in India, and a crazy, crazy life. But he has been part of this whole experience and has endorsed my book, Gregory David Roberts.
I love
And
that.
he has been my writing mentor during this entire project. And it's been a great gift of my life to meet him and become friends with him. So yeah, so that's been a beautiful experience along with
Oh,
everything else.
I had just kind of lost some sort of faith in Scandinavians having this kind of like glorified look on life, and people we meet and encounter with like so much grace and gratitude. And I just love seeing it. I'm so happy that I'm constantly questioning my own understanding of situations and cultures, and I love when I get to correct it essentially with my
Mm,
prejudice towards my own people. And I'm just really, really excited that I got to learn from you and to hear your story. I am so excited to read your book when it's available, and I'll make sure to include all of the details in my description, of course, because I mean, this is such a remarkable story in so many different levels. I mean, it's about love, life, and heartbreak and
yeah.
walking it off,
Yeah.
literally. And yeah, thank you so much for being on my podcast. I'm really grateful to have you here, Gideon.
Yeah, welcome. And I can add just one last thing is that
Of course.
if people are not interested in buying a book right away, they can sign up. I send you a link,
Yeah,
and that can be added as well for a free chapter. The first part of the book, basically, of how this journey actually got started.
right.
So just for people who want to see if this book is for them, they can read that for free, no problem. And if they like it, great. If they don't like it, no problem. Uh, but that's an opportunity to connect with the story and to connect with me and so on. So yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise the book is out June 22nd and can be bought anywhere.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you, and your story is incredible. I really hope that people do look into buying your book, and if not, like you said, to read that one free chapter. And I'm sure it's going to draw more people in. Yeah, thank you for sharing. I
Very
appreciate
welcome.
it.
Very welcome. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.